Hello, Julie.
Hello, Sarah.
We have not talked since before the grand movement of Pluto and the Sun across the threshold of Aquarius,
Oh, that was such an amazing moment for me. Yes, I had that wild dream and that was, yeah, here you go.
right? Thinking all the way back to that, and that's how it was for me. I'm just crawling out from underneath my.
I don't think I'm crawling out, but I'm glad you are. I feel like I've
That's
entered a new zone. I've entered a new realm. Yeah. And I listen for everything AI. Today they were talking about AI recognition at the airport, like facial recognition for the airports, and how convenient it would be and everything. And then this woman came on and said, yes, it's convenient. And someone said, but just like a QR code, like it just allows you to move, like who wouldn't want to move through the line faster? And she said, yeah. She said, but when you have a QR code and you leave the airport, it's destroyed. It doesn't exist. But when you take your face out of the airport, it's yours forever.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So, how long will it be before they decide they have to search all those faces to find blah blah, anyway,
Well,
I
that is
thought,
the ongoing like sort of square, right? The tension between convenience
yeah,
and um security, like your own personal security.
right. So I had to thank the woman who did the thinking for me because I hadn't thought, I mean, I wouldn't want facial recognition, but that's just because I'm, older, but I could see now that nobody should want facial recognition at the airport.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's already happened. I've already heard stories about people arresting the wrong person because
yeah,
but I mean that happens without it, but
yeah. Well, but more with it.
yeah, exactly. And anyway. Anyway. Yes, so we're fully into Pluto and Aquarius now. I mean, I know it goes back out again in November, I think.
September, October, and 3 weeks in November, and then it's done with Capricorn.
For our lifetimes, we'll never see Pluto and Capricorn unless AI comes up with a way to keep us alive for 200 years.
Oh my God, I can't believe how exhausting that would be.
Right?
Mhm. I
Right.
can't imagine being alive in the same body for 248 years.
Right? We need updates.
Yeah, right. Right. Talk about having the problem of not being able to solve the problem with the mindset that got you into it.
Yes, exactly.
Nothing.
So, right. So we did need to just acknowledge that that happened because I was like, oh, let's talk on that date. And then so many things happened around that time that it was here we are today, a month later, and we're close to the full moon. Now, the full moon in Virgo, which means the sun is in Pisces. So we've got it's coming up on the 24th of February.
Saturday, yeah.
Saturday. And what do you see? What does your oracle, you as the oracle see, Julie?
Um, Well, the sun is conjuncting Saturn. At the full moon, it's almost conjunct Saturn, and then in the few days that follow, it will exactly conjunct Saturn. And Mercury is hanging around as well. So that tells me that, well, it should tell me that there are serious considerations going on that will affect large groups of people. So we know what's going on in the world in many ways. But when I looked at this and I thought of what's going on in the world right now, there's this decision in Alabama that for in vitro, like people with in vitro now can't go to Alabama anymore because they've made it that an embryo is a human, like the embryo is the same as a baby. So someone dropped a dish with embryos in it, and that started this lawsuit thing.
Oh my
Anyway, it's
goodness.
interesting that the full moon is squaring the asteroid Pallas Athena, and Pallas Athena would definitely be someone who would fight for the rights uh, of women to conceive in vitro if that's what they want to do. And so there's a square there. So yeah, it's like a ridiculous. It doesn't look like a serious. I mean, it is serious, but it's like idiots being serious, if you'll forgive me.
Right.
And in a way, that's a big part of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are acting like they're grown-ups, making decisions from the
Mhm.
mind of children,
Yes.
stupid children, really.
In
Yeah.
many, I can see the truth of that in many arenas that we won't
Yeah,
go into all of
I
them.
think in many arenas, yeah.
Yeah. So, and so, sorry, okay, understand the Pallas Athena because Pallas Athena has to do with female. How would you describe the symbolism of Pallas Athena?
Pallas Athena is okay, so when I learned the asteroids from Eleanor Bach, she taught us that and this was in the 70s, just right after they were discovered, I think, um, that they represented aspects of the feminine that did not derive their meaning from patriarchy or from men.
Oh,
So Pallas Athena is the warrior, but she's not the Amazon exactly, because the Amazons were a fantasy of male thinking. They cut off their breasts and whatever, they dislocated the hips of their children. It was all male fantasy about women warriors.
right.
But there is an aspect of the feminine psyche that is very much a kind of, it's not just women's rights, it's the right to be successful and the right to live your life according to your own
Yeah.
idea of how you should live your life.
Right.
So it's freedom of that quality.
Okay. Okay. And then so that's in square to the sun in Pisces that is almost conjuncting Saturn and Mercury in there, opposing the moon, which is a full moon. Every full moon is in opposition to the sun.
Right, and Virgo has a lot to do with the inviolate rights of the body, right?
Right.
I think Virgo is actually the sign of virginity, not in the sense of um, chasteness, not in the sense of no sex, but more in the sense of virgin olive oil, where it hasn't been adulterated, right?
Right.
So Virgo is the full moon in Virgo is about the as square Pallas Athena is about the conflict of the fact that we have the right to determine, it's reproductive rights of women. It's the
Yeah.
bodies of women, as always. It's always the bodies of women that are that are being controlled. Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure there
Although,
are other
although I
benefits.
think there's an argument for on a larger scale of control over people's bodies, humans, but
Absolutely.
in
Yes.
other realms as well. So
Mhm.
uh it's a theme for sure.
It's a theme for sure. Yes.
And
Mhm.
and you were saying about how you said like decisions are being made for the future. That's an example of one of them is the Alabama ruling. But could you
Well,
explain?
the other thing about the full moon, if you scratch a little deeper, you can see that Mars and Venus are conjunct, squaring Jupiter,
Oh,
right? Jupiter is Jupiter is legal things, and Mars and Venus in Aquarius would be, the rights of the people,
mhm.
the desires of the people, the passions. But
Okay.
it's Aquarius isn't considered passionate, it's considered to be intellectually strong, and yeah.
So could that be people being passionate about their ideologies?
Hmm. But it's the square to Jupiter says there's a real struggle going on.
Uh-huh. Right. Okay, that makes sense. And so, oh, we saw Mars and Venus together. Do they travel quite closely to each other? Because they've been around each other a lot, like through Sag, they were with each other.
They come and go, they don't move at any kind of I mean, I'm sure there's a cycle you could figure out, but it's not one it's not one that we need to watch. They conjunct each other sometimes they square each other. They
Right,
can do anything to each other, yeah.
right. As a symbol of men and women, that is correct.
Yeah, it's a symbol of desire, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Desire, right. So okay, so we've got the full moon in Virgo, and we've got Mars and Venus in Aquarius squaring Jupiter in Taurus. And we know that coming up, Jupiter is going to make a very big deal conjunction to Uranus in April.
My sense is that people are really feeling it because, so what's happening, if you want to put this in your astrological thinking hat, is that Pluto went into Aquarius on January 20th. Mars went into Aquarius shortly thereafter. I mean, Mars went into Aquarius right after that. And then Venus went into Aquarius. So they're kind of saying, yeah, this Pluto and Aquarius thing, let's pay attention to it, right? Mars went into Aquarius on February 13th and Venus on February 16th. So Venus and Mars have recently been conjunct Pluto and activating that. So then they got tired of that, or they had enough of that. So now they're moving on and they're squaring Jupiter.
Right.
And by March, they will square. So March 3rd, Venus will square Uranus, and March 9th, Mars will square Uranus. So Jupiter, it's interesting. It's like a story. You could write a novel and you could move the characters in your novel just like the planets, and it would be a great story. So in fact, so Venus and Mars finished with, their bedeviling of Pluto, and now they're moving on to square Jupiter, and then they'll square Uranus. But as they square Jupiter and then Uranus, which isn't not so many days between, Venus is squaring Jupiter on the 24th, exactly at the full moon, and Mars will square Jupiter on the 27th, and then they will quickly move on and square Uranus. So they're showing us that the gap between Jupiter and Mars is shrinking.
Right.
Right. And then on April 20th or 21st, I think, Uranus and Jupiter will exactly conjunct, but they're already dialing it in. They're already getting, they're already walking to meet each other at high noon.
I knew. So yeah, I mean, I guess that would be such a good, right? That's why astrology and writing goes so well, is because you're in the realm of archetypes. You're in that realm. And the archetype of Mars, the archetype of Venus, the archetype of Jupiter. And if that would be a great writing exercise, for a writing teacher to be like, okay, here's the constellation, write your story.
Here's the characters.
Yeah. Here's the characters.
Move them through their scripts and on their stages. Yeah. Give them a stage and let them rip. Yeah.
And go for it. So so we can see if, like, as you said, I kind of did the old school as Venus and Mars being male and woman, but we've evolved and we understand that it's desire, right? It's the desire of and passions, right? Venus and Mars.
Yeah. What my first workshop that I ever taught for a group of people was every woman has a Mars of her own.
Right.
And that was in 1978.
So that was quite progressive back then.
Right. We haven't just discovered this about Mars,
Right.
you can't live your life without Mars, and you can't live your life without Venus.
Right. And everybody has their own Mars, everybody has their own Venus.
Right. And the gender stereotypes is a flaw in the culture, not in the archetypes.
Right. And not in astrology. It's just how we read it. Right.
Mhm.
So we've got those archetypes of Mars and Venus. As you said, what did you call them? They were kind of hassling Pluto. Is that what you said?
Bedeviling, yeah.
Bedeviling, right? And then they're moving on to do the same with Jupiter and Uranus. And is there anything that you could like imagine in that story, or is it you see
Yeah, I
in the
think
theme?
I think in the world, um, it's the nightmare of people having all the right ideas, but not being able to change the scenario on the ground. But so there, let's say we can only do as much as we can do about that. But in our personal lives, there's a frustration. When Aquarius squares Taurus, there's frustration because Aquarius sees the model. It sees the blueprint. And Taurus says, well, yeah, but you can't make that happen without this many nails and that many hammers and these many
Mm.
people to do the hammering, right? And so the gap, call it, between, or the frustration between having an ideal and making it real is what is going on for all of us between now and well, between now and March 9th in the moment, but this, and then when Uranus and Jupiter conjunct, they're not squaring anything by then. They're just conjuncting each other.
Right,
So it's like, well, okay, if you can't make it conform to your idea of it, then just watch it, then just let it rip.
right.
Right. So I would say that we should be, as individuals in our own, purpose-driven lives, we should think about where our frustrations are, and we should, maybe have a like a little psycho drama or astro drama dialogue. Over here are my ideals, my ideas of what I passionately, Mars and Venus, know could is possible. And over here are the circumstances that are keeping me from it, or that I have to address to make it happen.
Mm.
So there's, probably every architect knows that the blueprint doesn't get you the building exactly. There's always things that happen between the blueprint and the building.
Mm. I like that as a theme, as a tagline for this transit. Taking the ideal and making it real. That's what you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I understand about squares is that squares are challenges. They are tests. But if you're able to resolve the square, that's the goal, is to be able to take these two opposing or seemingly opposite uh intentions, ideal and real, and find a resolution to resolve the
Right, but
tension.
don't be invested in the resolution
Right,
just yet, because we have to get through it. Right now, you should be invested in the tension
right,
between the ideal and the real.
right. And just well, with resolution, like in any conflict, it has to be sort of there is a back and forth, there is a tussle of
Mhm.
but this until well, maybe it is Jupiter and Uranus like bursting through with an idea, with
Yeah, they'll
with
burst through with the reality of the idea.
right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe nothing will happen. I don't know if there'll be a world event, because there's always a world event. There's always something happening, right? You can just tune in to the news on any given day and find something that fits the astrology, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I do pick and choose. I mean, to some extent, but I usually just listen to what's driving the news report, because I figure that's driving all the news report. Like, I'll listen to two different news things, and if I hear the Alabama embryo story on both, I'll think, oh, that's interesting. That's today's news, right? And it
Right, right.
is. It
Yeah.
is today's news. So, but I'm not worried about in vitro for myself. That's not my personal thing. But that tension, which is, it's not exactly a tension. There's a desire to just blow those Republicans out of the water already. I mean, they're just making everyone so miserable.
Hmm.
But they have seized the means of legalizing their ideas, and who knows, maybe it is the Handmaid's Tale coming into being. I don't know.
Um, I think I was listening to something and somebody mentioned that Jupiter conjunct Uranus and I'm not sure if it was in Taurus or not. It was probably it was in a different sign, was when Windows got created or something. It was like the birth of like that great invention of
Oh,
Win
that would have been in Sag,
right.
when
Hmm.
they were in Sag, yeah. They
Yeah.
were conjunct in Sag, yeah.
That was like an example given for, um,
There was a lot going on when that happened, yeah.
yeah. So, so could be, something very inventive, something very, uh,
Yeah, I mean, the last time Jupiter conjuncted Uranus, it would have been, um, I don't know, we could look it up, but you could probably just go online and look it up. It would have been in a completely different sign, right?
right. Hmm.
I don't know what year Windows was created. Anyway,
Yeah.
you'd have to tell me to hunt for this before.
Yeah. Sorry. I just remembered it now just as an example. So,
Uh-huh.
we can,
It's it's interesting to go back and look. It's really fun. And then so it looks like the last time they conjuncted might have been in 2010, but Windows already existed there in Pisces
right. So it must have
or
been
Aries.
another,
Somewhere in 2010, it looks like there was a conjunction of Uranus and Jupiter.
okay, I'm going to do that for our next planetary pictures. I'll research a little bit of,
Okay.
examples of what that constellation brings, but definitely with Uranus, it can be innovation, technology,
Yes, it should be. It should be innovation and technology and really thinking outside the box, right?
revelation. Yeah.
So you could think of it this way. Since Uranus went into Taurus 6 years ago, approximately, um, it's been slamming into, it's like a wrecking ball around Taurus things like the economy and real estate and supply chain issues, right? It's been showing us how flimsy and um, unworkable the system is, because that's what Uranus does, right? And then along comes Jupiter and says, well, let's think outside the box,
Right.
right? Let's expand this. Let's see the farther shore,
Hmm.
right? So it's a very it should be very exciting. It's not a square. It should be um an exciting forward move.
Breakthrough, maybe
Yeah.
forward move. Yes, we can't
I
breakthrough has
guess
a
what makes me nervous about it a little bit is that then in by May, Jupiter will conjunct Algol and Uranus will not be far behind. So, but every time something conjuncts Algol, we don't have a nuclear blast. So,
right.
I don't want to get overworked about that.
That's good. Algol is the fixed star, that represents the Medusa. Is that correct? Is that how?
Well, let's just say it represents the Medusa, but it's the rage of nature. It's nature's rage
Mhm.
at being mistreated.
Right. And we, in our minds, in the archetype that we've grown up in the patriarchal culture, Medusa is negative, but, or is like against, it's
Well,
like,
Medusa is pretty powerful,
yeah,
but patriarchy sees Medusa as turning men to stone,
right,
and they refuse to recognize the power of or the beauty in the power of nature.
right. Hmm.
Yeah.
It's very one-sided to think of her as, uh,
Yes.
negative.
Right. Although it is negative in the sense that if you get caught in a earthquake, it doesn't feel, you're not like awed by the beauty if if the ground beneath your feet is vanishing, right?
Well, that's a funny story because when I was in Bali, I was with a teacher, a yoga teacher, and she was kind of about that because there was an earthquake happening, and uh it was very interesting. Yeah, we all moved outside, and then she was like, "Can you feel the power?" And we were standing there trying to feel the power of the earthquake moving through us. And I
There you
mean,
go.
okay, it wasn't like it was tremors. It wasn't a full-on, full-blown.
But it could have been.
It could have been,
You
yeah.
didn't know what was going to happen.
We didn't
That's
know.
wild.
Right. So we
Yeah.
did go outside, and she was like, she was full on, and we were all like, Yeah. Keep trying.
That's a great story. Well, you just remember that when Uranus and Jupiter conjunct.
Okay. I will try to channel Uma, my yoga teacher.
Yes, right, right.
Okay, so that's great. Thank you, Julie. Thanks for your insights. And hopefully we'll connect sooner in 2 weeks than we did last time.
Okay, that would be great.
Thanks, Julie.